you're passionate. Stories tell that you have insight and on a background into what it is that you're doing, right? Storytelling is a good way of engaging people. Stories are powerful and emotional, yet unappreciated in many business presentations. The most memorable presentations don't start with data. They start with a compelling personal story. It's not about data, but it's about engagement. Use pictures to tell the story. Pictures are far more memorable than words. Studies have shown that people will remember 10% of information, but the content is delivered verbally. Add a photograph and retention soars to 65%. As humans growing up, psychologists have discovered that we learn by sight and sound. So that means sight first, sound later. So what children see is what they will emulate. What they hear, they will try later. But essentially, what they see. So you need to show people visuals of what the product is. Express your passion. You need to show that you're passionate about the product. But the moment you're passionate about the product means even if it fails, you'll still be there trying to want to find out. So people are more willing to give money to people who they know will soldier on rather than someone who's trying to do this for I don't know, maybe to earn a quick buck. Introduce a villain and a hero. I mean, in every movie there's a villain, in every movie there's a hero. Great stories in movies have a villain who causes problems and a hero who saves the day. In the context of a business presentation, think about villains and heroes as problems and solutions. What is the problem that your idea solves? So the problem becomes the villain, the hero becomes the solution. And the last thing on this is share the stage. When you're presenting to a team that is likely to give you money, they need to know that there is expertise and there are people behind it, versus being there up on your own. So if you can share the stage with and say, this is my co-founder, he's a tech, this is my co-founder, he's a marketing person, people believe more in a brand than they believe in an individual. Right. Does anyone have questions on that? No. So the last thing is common mistakes that I've seen when people are making presentations. The original definition of the elevator pitch is like literally the elevator. When you meet someone, maybe you meet Stripe Masiwa or James Makambo, whoever that you meet in an elevator, and you have to tell them in a minute or less what it is that you do, right? And that's what elevator means. Obviously, along the way it has evolved, but that's where elevator came from, right? That's why Steve Jobs said 1,000 songs in your pocket. Immediately, he captivated the audience and he changed the generation forever, right? So your elevator pitch should not be longer than a minute. It should not take you more than 60 seconds to define what your product is, what it does, and you should know it at the tip of your hand. Right? 2, another common mistake is the PowerPoint presentation, aka the deck, is too long. Professional investors such as venture capitalists that are going to be innovation Baraza and serious angel investors do not have long attention spans. They have the attention span of children because they have a lot of people to look at. So imagine there are 40 businesses that they have to look at, and you want to give them a 40-minute presentation. They are not going to be interested. Number 3, not having a factually supported goal with an executive primary. A summary should include the problem that the startup will be solving, the size of the market the startup will be addressing, a sustainable competitive advantage, the expected revenues and costs of the startup that are supported by realistic and detailed assumptions of projections. I think being realistic is one of the biggest things that we don't have, and not having a contingency, financials is one of the biggest setbacks as well. The likelihood of your product going viral in 3 years or in 1 year and equating it to Facebook where it is now doesn't work. Facebook took more than 10 years to get to where it is now. If they're making billions because it's been a consistent work, you're not going to get 3 billion in 3 months or in a year, if that makes sense. So your financials have to be realistic. A description of the startup's management team, right? It has to be in the executive summary as well. People need to know what they're getting into. They need to know who's behind you. They need to know who you're working with. Right? And the exit for the investors. By exit in startup terms, it doesn't mean them leaving the company. It means their financial, how do I put it? It means the profit that they're going to get from their investment. So if they put in 5 million today, they exit. If it's in 3 years, they need to know that they're going to make 15 million in 3 years. Right? The best elevator speech in the world will not result in any money unless you can deliver an analytical and believable business plan explaining how investment in the startup will make its investors rich. Number 4 is overlooking a realistic exit for strategy for investors. As much as everyone is for saving the world or solving social problems, they're doing it for money. So if you illustrate something that is quite perfect, that is something great, something that people will tear up and they'll cry, but if they don't make money in it, they're not going to go for it. Because they'll tell you, go to United Nations, go to UNICEF, or go to USAID. Right? Another mistake that people often make is discussing valuation too early on in the negotiation. I discovered, like I said, I grew up quite late in the dating game. When you're asking someone now, you can't start by evaluating where you're going to be in the next 7 years and saying I'm going to be worth this much. So, if in the event that we break up, you're going to get this, right? So the courtship issue of most couples does not start with the discussion of how much each person will be worth 7 years from their first date and how to be divided between them and when they separate. And neither should an investment presentation begin with a similar discussion. You need to show value because before you can evaluate it, right? Validate that I'm worth this much, but you need to really show value and what gap you're solving in the market. Number 6, I think it's the failure to listen. Most people go into a presentation thinking they have it locked down and they're going to walk out with money. So when an investor asks them a question like, how much do you think your company is worth, or why didn't you do this, or don't you think so and so is doing the same thing? I think it's best to ask why they think that and to give your factual presentation of what you think rather than argue with them. And the biggest thing you can ever do for yourself is to leave your ego at the door. These are guys that have money. These are guys that have properly presented over tons of this. They have an advantage over you, and they're going to be rough, but you need to leave your ego at the door. So that's all for me. Does anyone have any questions? Replication. Yeah. Has anyone ever seen the Facebook movie Social Network? When they started out at Harvard, right? So there was the growth, and it grew, and everyone was there. And so to scale it, so they started with the .edu email address, right? So they didn't scale it to others, people who didn't have the .edu, right? They wanted to do it in Oxford, which was in UK, and they didn't have those same addresses. So that's scaling it, opening to others. The replication is actually taking the same solution and putting it in another market and making it work. So it's scalability, growth, and replication. Yeah. Any more questions? Right, great. So,
how does one present an idea that will probably focus? That will probably focus, say, vulnerable communities or vulnerable markets, like maybe you've got a solution that, maybe you have developed a solution that you would target to assist orphans, for example. I'm just giving it as an example. Yes. And the target market may not give you returns, but you want to attract social investors. And how do you present that as a business case? Because we are coming from a business angle, but we are targeting a vulnerable market.
I think from the start you need to clearly articulate that your venture is a social entrepreneurship venture, right? The moment you present it as a business, which is an exit, which is profitable for investors, they'll judge you according to that. And they'll tell you this is no money for us. But if it's a social entrepreneurship angle, you really need to articulate that. And the investors is there, the investors who are inclined that they'll take it on. The problem is presenting it as something which is profitable, and they look at it and they say this is social entrepreneurship. Yeah.
So, building up on the last question. So, do you mean that social entrepreneurship ventures shouldn't have? Thanks. Based on the last question and your response to that question, my question is, so do you mean to say that social entrepreneurship ventures don't have an exit strategy for investors, say they get seed funding?